One of the other books that you recommended, and I picked it up and ran with it, was Paul Abelson's The Seven Liberal Arts of Study in Medieval Culture, which, again, I came to respect the book of Latin that I was holding in my hand when I reached out to my bookshelf, just from that. But then the fact that music has been always such a part of the human psychology that there were too many things to list. And I just, again, I'm trying not to do all my book reviews yet again for you, but that I do listen to a lot of your suggestions and try and zone out some of the other ones. But one of the things I never see people answer, and so this is a legitimate, a real question that I have is, why are we sure that the classical method is the best method, as most people I see talk about it tend to? We're always saying, well, it's the Greeks and the Romans co-opted it from the Greeks, and I'm currently in my development now, and I started with Homer, and I got past Aeschylus, who I cannot stand his humor. It feels very vaudevillian, and I really do like vaudeville humor, but I could not stand it. But I understand what he's doing in that storytelling. I'm finally moving on to the poetry, and that's a brag to you that I'm actually reading the Greeks. But why do we go back to the Greeks and say this is the classical model, and this is the way to do it? And it's the Romans did it. Italy helped preserve it. Charlemagne wanted it for his people. Alfred the Great wanted it for his people. The founding fathers of this generation were trained in that. Other than kind of just look at all these important people and they had it, why are we sure that going back to the Greek and then working our way forward is kind of the model to use?
Well, for one thing, that's how Christianity happened. For one thing, the Greek way of thinking, Hellenism is called. Hellas is the Greek word for Greek. Alexander the Great goes and conquers the world in the 4th century BC, and that included Israel. So by the time that Jesus is walking the earth, the Jews have been almost completely Hellenized, right? They recognized the truths that the Greeks had. And they didn't deny them just because they were Greek true. They were being voiced by Greeks. So they're reading out of a Greek Bible. The Jews are reading at that time out of a Greek, the Septuagint.
Yeah, right.
Most of the quotes in the New Testament are from the Septuagint, right? And you also have this philosophical tradition that's going on with the Greeks. You have the pre-Socratics who are starting to ask these really fundamental philosophical questions. What is the thing behind everything? What is this force, this idea that is behind the good and the true and the beautiful, right? And then John comes along, writing in the New Testament in Greek, because the New Testament is written in Greek, okay? And he says, "En arche ein ho logos." In the beginning was the logos. That's the word that's used there. That was the word that the Neoplatonists were using for this thing behind everything that they were searching for. They're searching in various different ways for what is behind all this. Why is the world the way it is? And John uses that very word in the beginning of his gospel. And I don't think that's an accident. I think he had to have known the implications of that word.
From both the Judaism perspective, who wouldn't have liked that, but also from the Greek perspective, that you're going to place this up on the same pedestal as a deity? No. So yeah, that's very
but the thing that it was even behind because the gods to the Greeks it's kind of a strange. In some way, they're tall tales.
Right.
And in some ways, they're when they do believe in actual gods, as Edith Hamilton points out, it didn't play a very big part in Greek thinking. The gods. The paganism of if you want to use that word, that sounds like a bad word, but the paganism of the Greeks was philosophical thought and literary thought. That's what they were really good. That's far more than their own religion. Their religion mattered very little in society. You sacrificed to the gods, but that's about it. They didn't affect anything. They didn't have any power in other cultures.
Right. Like reading Homer, you have this idea of Zeus almost being, he's fate's hand, but also he controls fate. But then when you get to Aristophanes, who's decrying Socrates, is either legitimately or paradoxically, of bringing down the youth to corrupt it, and is that where the Greek culture is then gonna to lose itself?
Yeah.
A key factor
Well,
there.
I mean, the distinguishing factor about the Greeks wasn't that they believed certain things. I've seen these books that come out, won't name names, but they'll say the Greeks believed X. Well, some Greeks believed X. Other of them did not believe X and argued against it. They argued. They were always arguing in a way that no other culture had because they were searching for the truth, right? And Chesterton has that great quote: "Christianity is the fulfillment of paganism." What did he mean by that? What he meant was the pagans, if by pagans you mean the Greeks, they were searching for the truth. They didn't have it, but they were searching for it.
Right.
And Christianity comes along and has the truth, right? And so that the scene at the Areopagus, where they ask Paul, "What is this God that you're proclaiming?" They want to know. They're not asking because they're going to haul him off and crucify him somewhere. They're asking because they want to know.
Right.
Because and Paul says, I'm preaching the God that you already know. Right? I mean, so I think that scene to me, Paul at Mars Hill, really encompasses this great clash of cultures and the answer being given to the culture that was asking all the questions, right?
Right.
He wasn't saying it's wrong to ask those questions. He said he's going to give an answer to the question.
Right.
Right. So I think that people sort of misunderstand this whole Athens Jerusalem thing because really Athens was asking the good questions, and Jerusalem, if you count in there Christianity, the old tradition, it's got the answer to those questions. And so you have this going on at the beginning of the church.
Yeah.
Tertullian is asking, "What hath Athens to do with Jerusalem?" But he was in the minority in challenging that. The
Abelson's book makes that point abundantly clear of just
which
how
book?
quickly Abelson's book, The Seven
Yes,
Noble
yes,
Arts,
yes.
he makes that point abundantly clear of Christianity is a little bit nervous at first to adopt it, but it almost seems like a political pushback from Romanism. But then once they take over, they're like, yeah, absolutely, this is how we're going to educate our children, and it's just gung ho. And the paganism, we have this idea of like, oh, Harry Potter is evil because it promotes witchcraft. For them, that wasn't even their mind of like, oh, paganism, but those gods are dead. They didn't exist. So we're going to take what's good and we're going to use it for ourselves. Yeah.
And that was really almost universally the attitude of the church, both in the Eastern Church and the Western Church. They're looking upon this as the Egyptian gold, the gold that was showered on the Hebrews as they left Egypt after the plagues. And they used it to make a golden cap, but they also used it at God's command to fashion the vessels of the tabernacle. So the gold's not bad because it was given to them by pagans. It's used for good at God's command. So yeah, I think that's a quite misunderstood dynamic going on there. But they did work it out. Augustine, particularly, even in the City of God, he's defending the Christians against the charges by the Romans that it's this rise of Christianity that's what's brought down the empire, because Augustine's living right at the end of the Roman Empire and it's already falling, and then also Christians who are saying what do we need to have to do with all this pagan learning, and he's kind of making a double apologetic there, and to those people saying, look, what the so-called pagan learning that we have, this was taken from the minds of God's providence, and we should use it for the good.
Right.